In the quiet depths of space, the Andromeda Nebula remained an enigma. To most of the galactic community, it was little more than a region of dust and gas, a cosmic wilderness far from the bustling center of the Milky Way. But for the crew of the Starship Odyssey, it was the focal point of their search for something more, something that could reshape the understanding of the universe. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the helm of the Odyssey, her fingers poised over the console as the ship drifted closer to the nebula. Her crew had been preparing for months, tirelessly studying ancient star maps, decoding cryptic signals that had emanated from this region over the centuries. The messages were fragments of long-forgotten languages, snippets of lost civilizations from an age before the rise of the modern galactic order. Yet, there was one thing that intrigued Ilara more than any theory or hypothesis. The name that had appeared in those fragmented signals, Malthoria. Malthoria, she murmured under her breath. A name as ancient as the stars themselves. What was it? Ilara had no clear answer, only a gut feeling that this would be a turning point. The Odyssey's mission was no longer just about exploration. It was about uncovering secrets that could change the fate of all sentient life in the galaxy. The ship's sensors beeped, indicating something unusual. A faint anomaly was emerging from the nebula, a shimmering mass of energy, faint yet unmistakably artificial. The crew, a diverse assembly of explorers, archaeologists and scientists, gathered around the command center as the readings came through. "It's coming from within the nebula," Lieutenant Cade Wren, the ship's chief engineer, reported. "But it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. A kind of pulse, almost like a beacon." Ilara's curiosity piqued. "What's the source?" Cade hesitated. I can't tell. The energy signature is too complex, too unlike anything our technology can identify. But there's something familiar about it." A sense of foreboding swept over the crew as they stared at the screen, captivated by the strange, flickering pulse of energy. It was clear that they weren't the only ones in the nebula. Whatever or whoever had sent the signal was waiting, and it had been waiting for a long time. With a decisive movement, Ilara adjusted the ship's course, guiding the Odyssey deeper into the heart of the nebula. The ship passed through clouds of gas and dust, the faint pulses growing stronger, almost as if calling them toward it. As they moved forward, the stars outside seemed to fade into the backdrop of swirling nebulae, and the atmosphere inside the ship grew tense. Minutes later, they arrived at a clearing within the nebula. What they found was a sight that would forever alter the trajectory of their lives. Floating in the void, hidden within a crystalline structure, was an enormous ring. It was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. The structure's surface shimmered with patterns of light, as though it was alive, its metallic alloy seemingly breathing. The ring, in its colossal form, was surrounded by remnants of something ancient, something massive. Fragments of stone, scorched by time, floated freely around it. "Is this Malthoria?" whispered Dr. Orendal, the lead archaeologist, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know yet," Captain Voss replied, her voice steady but laced with awe. "But we're about to find out." The Odyssey moved in closer, the ship's shields shimmering as the intensity of the radiation from the artifact increased. As they approached, something triggered within the structure. The pulses became more erratic, almost frantic, and then with a sudden surge, the ring began to open. Slowly at first, but then with increasing speed, it expanded outward, revealing a hidden entrance within its center. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. No one spoke, but the question hung in the air: should they venture inside? Before anyone could voice their concerns, the Odyssey's communication systems crackled to life, a message coming through the ether. But it wasn't in any language the crew knew. The words, ancient and unintelligible, echoed through the bridge, filling the crew with a sense of urgency. The voices, ethereal and distant, sounded like they had come from a time long past. The ring was waiting. "Activate the translation protocols," Ilara ordered, her tone resolute. "We need to know what it says." As the ship's systems hummed to life, the Odyssey hovered on the brink of a discovery that would send ripples throughout the galaxy. It was a moment of truth. The echoes of a forgotten civilization had been awakened. And with them, the mysteries of the Andromeda Nebula were about to unfold. The silence on the Odyssey's bridge was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems and the distant crackling of the ancient communication. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the enigmatic structure before them, the ring now fully opened, revealing an almost inviting darkness within. The entrance shimmered with an otherworldly glow, its walls adorned with symbols, lines, and geometric patterns that danced as if alive. Dr. Orendal, whose excitement had been building ever since the crew discovered the artifact, was the first to speak. This is no ordinary relic. I've seen these symbols before, in fragments from ancient texts I've studied. This is Malthoria's legacy. The translation protocols beeped to life, and the ship's AI, Zeta, began to decipher the strange language that had echoed through the communication system. Words formed on the screen, forming a cryptic message. The door to the lost is open. The path to rebirth begins. Seek the truth within the shadow of Malthoria. Ilara's gaze narrowed and she turned to Cade Wren. Can we enter the ring? Is it safe? Cade's hands flew over the console, running diagnostics. It's stable for now, Captain. The energy readings are off the charts, but I can't detect any immediate threats, though it's hard to say what lies inside. The structure appears to be dormant until now, but it's clearly been activated. My guess is that this place was waiting for someone, or something, to trigger its systems. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Every instinct told them to proceed cautiously, but the allure of the unknown was too powerful to ignore. The mysteries of Malthoria, the forgotten civilization buried deep within the Andromeda Nebula, were too significant to leave unexplored. We didn't come this far to turn back, Ilara said, her voice firm. Prepare the landing party. We're going in. Minutes later, a small team of explorers, led by Captain Voss and Dr. Dal, suited up and entered the Odyssey's shuttle. The ship's landing bay doors opened, revealing the vastness of the nebula, the glowing ring just ahead. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and the crew drifted toward the entrance, their ship's lights reflecting off the swirling clouds of gas and dust. As they approached the ring, the shuttle's sensors began to behave erratically. The energy fields around the structure seemed to distort, pulling at the ship in ways they couldn't explain. Cade's voice crackled through the comms. Captain, you're entering the zone of high-energy fluctuation. I recommend proceeding with extreme caution. The ring's gravity is unstable, but it was too late. The shuttle's gravity dampeners flickered and shut down as they passed through the opening, and for a moment, everything inside the craft went weightless. The crew struggled to hold onto their seats as they descended into the unknown. A moment later, the shuttle landed with a soft thud, the gravitational pull of the ancient structure resetting the ship's systems. The crew quickly suited up and opened the airlock, stepping onto the surface of the ring. The interior was unlike anything they had expected. It wasn't the cold, barren space they imagined, but a vast, crystalline chamber that seemed to stretch on infinitely. The walls were alive with pulsating light, shifting colors as though they were responding to their presence. The air was thick with an otherworldly hum, vibrating beneath their feet. The patterns on the walls were intricate, overlapping in ways that suggested advanced knowledge of geometry, physics, and perhaps something even more profound, something that defied the boundaries of known science. This place, Dr. Dal whispered, his voice reverberating in the chamber. It's like a bridge, an interface between worlds. Ilara studied the chamber, her eyes scanning every surface, her mind racing. A bridge to what? Before anyone could answer, a soft, melodic hum filled the air. The walls shimmered, and in the center of the chamber, a large pedestal began to rise from the floor. Atop it was a crystalline sphere, glowing faintly with an inner light. Without warning, the symbols on the walls began to shift, rearranging themselves into a new configuration. A low, rumbling voice boomed through the chamber, as if the structure itself was speaking. The time has come. The echoes of the forgotten shall awaken. The one who dares to seek the truth must first accept the trials of Malthoria. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. The voice was ancient, powerful, and yet tinged with an eerie sadness. Something was stirring within the ring, something that had been dormant for millennia. We have to be ready for whatever comes next, Ilara said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. This isn't just a discovery. It's a challenge. As the crew gazed at the pedestal and the glowing sphere, the hum of the chamber intensified. The trials of Malthoria were beginning. The question now was whether they were prepared to face them, and whether they could survive the journey that lay ahead. But one thing was certain, they had unlocked a door to a long-forgotten galaxy, and there was no turning back. The sphere on the pedestal pulsed, its glow intensifying with every heartbeat. A strange tension filled the air as the crew stood in rapt attention, unsure of what was about to unfold. The ancient voice, deep and echoing, had left them with more questions than answers. The trials of Malthoria, Dr. Dal muttered, his eyes never leaving the glowing orb. If what we've uncovered is true, this could be the key to understanding not just Malthoria itself, but the entire history of this lost civilization. Their rise, their fall, their secrets. Secrets or no secrets, Lieutenant Cade Wren interjected, his voice tense. "We need to understand what this thing wants from us before we go any further." Captain Voss stepped forward, her gaze never leaving the pedestal. The air seemed charged, and the very atmosphere inside the ring seemed to vibrate with an unnatural energy. There was a pull, subtle but undeniable, urging her closer. "Whatever happens," Alara said, her voice resolute, "we face it together. We didn't come here just to observe. We came to uncover the truth." The pedestal's pulse suddenly shifted, and the sphere detached from it with a soft hum. It floated upward, suspended in midair, casting a beam of light down onto the floor beneath it. As the light spread, the crystalline floor of the chamber began to glow, revealing intricate patterns that hadn't been visible before. The symbols on the walls twisted and turned, rearranging themselves as if responding to the sphere's energy. The ancient voice returned, now speaking in a language that resonated deeply within their minds. "The trials await the worthy. Only those who can solve the puzzle of existence may move forward." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a relic, it was a living, breathing puzzle. And it wasn't offering them an easy path. "Brace yourselves," Alara commanded. "We have no idea what these trials will involve. Stick together and keep your wits about you." As the last words left her mouth, the floor beneath them began to shift. The patterns on the crystalline surface swirled into a maze of glowing lines, creating multiple pathways that led in every direction. The center of the chamber began to descend, revealing a massive, intricately carved door embedded into the floor. It was a strange hybrid of organic and mechanical, ancient yet seemingly built with advanced technology. The voice echoed once more. "Only the pure of heart and sharp of mind may pass." The first trial begins. Suddenly the maze erupted into action. The walls shifted and the pathways rearranged themselves, forming a labyrinth that was both a physical and mental challenge. At the heart of the labyrinth stood an enormous floating platform, above which a series of shifting holographic symbols appeared. "Puzzle," Dr. Dahl observed, his voice filled with fascination. "This is a test of intellect." Alara nodded grimly. "Looks like we'll need to solve this if we want to move forward." The symbols in the air above the platform shifted continuously, sometimes moving faster than the eye could follow. They formed patterns, then broke apart again, creating a confusing blur of shapes and meanings. Some symbols were recognizable, geometric shapes, basic mathematical formulas, but others were utterly alien. Complex calculations, cryptic references, and equations that seemed to stretch into infinity. "We need to work together on this," Dr. Dahl said, kneeling next to the holographic interface. "I'll try to decipher these symbols. Everyone else, start looking for connections, patterns that might repeat themselves. This could be a riddle." As the crew began to work, Alara's mind raced. They had no time to waste. The clock was ticking and the sphere's hum reverberated through the air, as though pushing them to hurry. The weight of the ancient trials bore down on them. Cade leaned over the console, scanning the symbols with a sharp eye. The sequences repeat. The symbols form equations, but they don't follow any conventional format. It's as if they're meant to challenge our perception of logic. Alara took a step back, watching the crew work in unison. As they pieced together the puzzle, she noticed something strange. The symbols began to morph in response to their efforts. When they connected two seemingly unrelated sequences, the puzzle reacted, shifting in alignment with their thought patterns. It was as if the chamber itself was watching, learning from them. "Wait!" Dr. Dahl exclaimed, his finger pointing to a specific part of the glowing holograms. "These are patterns of energy, not just symbols. They represent forces of nature, the basic building blocks of the universe. I think we need to combine them in a way that reflects the balance of reality itself." As the crew worked tirelessly, the walls around them began to react to their progress. The maze of pathways started to retract, pulling back into the walls as if clearing a path toward the next stage of the trial. The shimmering light began to pulse more rapidly, responding to the rhythm of their solution. With a sudden rush of energy, the final piece clicked into place. The platform in the center of the chamber hummed with a new intensity, the glowing symbols converging into a single, unified pattern. The entire chamber seemed to breathe in unison with the crew, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. The doors that had been hidden in the floor began to rise, revealing a passage forward. The ancient voice returned, this time more serene, yet still carrying the weight of eternity. "The first trial is complete. The path is open. But more await. Will you continue? Will you face the darkness of Malthoria's fall?" Alara turned to her crew, her heart pounding in her chest. The first trial had been grueling, testing both their intellect and their ability to adapt. But they had passed. And with the door now open, there was no turning back. "We move forward," she said, her voice resolute. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." And with that, they stepped into the passageway, ready for the trials of Malthoria to push them further into the depths of the unknown. The passage that stretched out before them was both ancient and meticulously constructed, its walls smooth yet worn by the passage of time. The air inside felt heavy, thick with the weight of forgotten eons. As Alara and her crew ventured deeper, the strange hum of the Malthorian structure pulsed beneath their feet, growing in intensity as they moved forward. The glowing symbols that had illuminated the first chamber had faded, replaced by a darker, more oppressive atmosphere. "The trials are just beginning," Dr. Dal murmured, his voice echoing off the walls as he led the way, his flashlight cutting through the dimness. "But I feel it, this place, it isn't just a tomb. It's alive with memories. Every inch of this structure is a testament to a civilization long gone, yet still watching, still waiting for the worthy." Ilara nodded, her hand resting on her blaster as she surveyed their surroundings. "And if the trials are this dangerous already, the stakes are higher than we thought." Lieutenant Cade Wren scanned the walls with a cautious eye, his tech expertise attuned to every irregularity in the design. "Look here," he said, pointing to a set of strange, crystalline panels embedded in the walls. "These aren't just decorations. They seem to react to us. The moment we enter a certain proximity, they flicker to life, almost like they're recording our movements." Captain Voss felt a chill run down her spine. If the Malthorians were watching, it wasn't just out of curiosity, they were testing them, every step of the way. As they pressed forward, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber, its size almost impossible to comprehend. The ceiling stretched so high above them that it disappeared into the dark abyss, while the walls were adorned with murals that depicted scenes from a time long past, a civilization flourishing in its prime, its citizens thriving under the light of two suns. But as the crew moved deeper into the room, the murals grew darker. Some depicted cataclysmic events, planets crumbling and vast starships breaking apart in the cold expanse of space. The final images were a haunting portrayal of devastation, a once great empire reduced to ruin, its cities and people swallowed by the darkness. "This was no ordinary fall," Dr. Dal whispered, his voice thick with awe. "This was a cataclysm. A civilization that reached the stars, only to be undone by its own ambition." At the far end of the chamber, an enormous stone throne stood, its design intricate and regal. Upon it sat a figure, not a living being but an ancient statue crafted with the skill of a master artist. Its eyes, made of some luminous material, seemed to watch them as they entered. The throne was surrounded by strange runes, etched into the stone like an ancient script that none of the crew could understand. Ilara stepped forward, drawn to the statue. This must be a ruler of Malthoria. But what happened to them? What was this empire's downfall? Dr. Dal stepped up beside her, his gaze fixed on the figure. "From the patterns and designs on these murals, I can infer a great deal. Malthoria's civilization wasn't destroyed by outside forces. No, it was torn apart from within. There's something we're missing, Captain. Something about their very nature. Something dark." The crew stood in uneasy silence as they examined the throne. It wasn't just a monument, it was a reminder, a relic of a time when power had been absolute, when the Malthorians ruled with unmatched technological mastery. But the devastation that had befallen them was too much to ignore. It was as if the echoes of their destruction still lingered within the very stone. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the walls began to shift, the murals flickering as though reacting to some unseen force. The throne began to glow with an eerie light, casting long, unnatural shadows across the chamber. A low, reverberating hum filled the air, and a voice, ancient and filled with sorrow, whispered from every direction. "Those who seek the truth shall pay the price." The voice echoed and distorted, growing louder and more desperate with every passing second. The crew's surroundings warped, the walls trembling as if alive, and the once familiar path they had walked began to unravel, transforming into an endless spiral of shifting stone and metal. Ilara's heart raced as she looked around. "We're being tested. Again." Dr. Dal's voice trembled with realization. "This isn't just a trial of intellect, Captain. This is a trial of will." Malthoria's fall was not just about war or betrayal. It was a destruction of belief, of the very foundations of their civilization. They allowed something dark to infiltrate their hearts, something that consumed them from within. And now? Before he could finish, the ground shook violently, and the chamber's walls split apart, revealing a vast chasm below. A torrent of black smoke poured from the opening, swirling in a violent storm, as if the very heart of Malthoria was unleashing its wrath. From the depths, shapes began to rise, dark, shadowy figures, their forms indistinct, yet their presence overwhelming. They were not alive, but their energy was palpable, oppressive. They were the remnants of Malthoria's civilization, lost souls trapped within the structure, bound to the place of their destruction. The shadows began to shift toward the crew, their forms growing more defined with each passing second, their hollow eyes fixed on the intruders. "They've returned," Dr. Dal breathed. "The fallen ones, the souls of Malthoria's end." The figures closed in, their whispers filling the air like a storm of voices. They weren't just spirits. They were memories of Malthoria's collapse, echoes of a long-dead civilization seeking to consume the living. Elara raised her weapon, steadying her breath. "Get ready. We fight our way out of here or we don't leave." The crew braced for impact, weapons drawn as the shadows closed in. The true trial had begun, a fight for survival against the dark remnants of Malthoria, whose fall still lingered in the very fabric of the structure. Whatever secret this place held, they would have to face it head-on, or be consumed by the darkness that had once consumed an entire galaxy. And the shadows were hungry. The air inside the chamber crackled with tension as the shadowy figures slowly advanced toward the crew. Their forms shimmered, their edges blurring in and out of focus as if they existed somewhere between the material world and the ether. Their presence was chilling, not just in temperature but in the overwhelming sense of despair and hopelessness they exuded. It was as though every step they took was a silent reminder of Malthoria's tragic fall, a civilization so consumed by its own hubris that its very essence had turned into an eternal void. Elara's grip tightened on her blaster as she squared her shoulders, prepared for the inevitable. "Don't let them touch you," she ordered, her voice steady. "These aren't just memories. They're a manifestation of Malthoria's collapse, a force that lives within this place." The shadows twisted and writhed, each figure taking on an almost grotesque form, their faces devoid of any recognizable features, just hollow, spectral visages. They seemed to drift effortlessly through the air, their movements a strange, unsettling mix of grace and violence. The humming sound, now louder than before, reverberated through the chamber, as though the structure itself was feeding the dark energy rising from the depths. Cade took a defensive position, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows. "We need to contain them. If we don't, we're going to be overwhelmed." Dr. Dal, who had been standing frozen in awe, suddenly snapped back to reality. "Contain them? With what? These things aren't made of flesh. They're made of Malthoria's despair. They'll tear us apart without a second thought." "We don't have the luxury of time to figure out their biology," Elara said grimly. "We need to fight them and we need to fight smart." Cade, Dal set up perimeter defenses. "Everyone else stay close." The crew quickly took up defensive positions, their weapons at the ready. The shadows began to move faster, rushing toward them in a cloud of dark energy. Elara fired the first shot, sending a burst of energy toward the nearest shadow. The blast struck, but the figure seemed to absorb it, the energy dissipating into the air with a hiss. "They're not physical," Cade said, his voice tight with frustration. "We can't shoot them like normal targets. We need to find another way." The shadows began to circle them, their hollow voices growing louder. Whispers, unintelligible but full of malice, filled the air around them. Each word seemed to claw at their sanity, reminding them of their deepest fears, their insecurities. The oppressive weight of the Malthorian tragedy pressed in on them, suffocating them with visions of failure and despair. But Elara's resolve was unwavering. She'd faced worse odds and she wasn't about to let this place swallow her and her crew. "Stay focused. Don't listen to the whispers. We have to break their hold." Dr. Dal, his eyes darting around the chamber, suddenly shouted in realization. "The murals. They depict the fall of Malthoria, the dark force that consumed them. This darkness, it's not just a manifestation of their memories. It's tied to the very energy of their collapse. We need to reverse it." Elara's mind raced. "How do we do that?" "The patterns," Dal said, pointing toward the far wall where the murals began to shift again. The images now depicted something even darker, shadowy figures resembling the ones attacking them, but these were not just figments of history, they were the key to the puzzle. They weren't just depicting events. They were recording a ritual. The Malthorians believed that to survive their downfall, they had to bind the darkness into the structure itself. They created this place to contain it, but it seems they failed. "The ritual," Elara said, understanding now. "We need to reverse it, bind the darkness again." The shadows began to move faster, their whispers growing into a cacophony of madness. Ilara's heart pounded, but her mind was sharp. They had one chance to stop this. Dr. Dal, what do we need to do? Dal's eyes scanned the wall as the figures closed in. There's a central focus to the ritual. It's tied to the throne, the heart of the chamber. We need to reach it and activate the Malthorian energy flow in reverse. It's the only way to stop these entities. Without hesitation, Ilara sprinted toward the throne, her crew following closely behind. As they neared the structure, the shadows seemed to sense their intentions, converging on them with terrifying speed. Cade fired off several shots in rapid succession, but the blasts only seemed to scatter and fade as they struck the shadows. They had no effect. We need something more, he muttered, his voice strained. I've got it, Dr. Dal shouted from behind. He quickly pulled out a device from his pack, an ancient Malthorian artifact that had been retrieved from one of the previous chambers. It was a small, crystalline fragment that seemed to pulse with energy. This should be the key to unlocking the ritual. If we can get it to the throne, we might be able to activate the countermeasure. Ilara nodded sharply. Cover Dal? With Cade providing cover fire, Ilara and Dal reached the throne. Dal carefully inserted the crystal into a slot in the center of the throne, the device slotting into place with a soft click. Immediately, the chamber responded. The shadows screeched, their forms distorting in agony as the energy around them shifted. The crystal began to glow with a blinding light, and a low hum vibrated through the floor beneath them. The shadows recoiled, their forms flickering and spasming as the ancient energy began to flow once more, this time in the opposite direction. The throne became the focal point of a massive radiant beam of light that cascaded through the chamber, pushing the darkness back. The shadows screamed in fury as the light intensified, their forms beginning to fracture and break apart. Ilara held her ground, her eyes fixed on the shifting mass of energy. We're almost there. Then, with a final, deafening cry, the shadows disintegrated into nothingness, their forms vanishing as if they had never existed. The chamber fell silent once more, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. The light from the throne dimmed, leaving the crew standing in the eerie stillness of the chamber. The murals had changed again, now depicting a serene scene, the Malthorian civilization at peace, their world flourishing. It was as though the cycle had been completed, the darkness bound once more. Dr. Dal slumped against the throne, gasping for breath. That was too close. Ilara turned to him, her face set in determination. We've made it this far. But this isn't over. We've uncovered a fraction of the truth, and we still don't know what awaits us in the depths of Malthoria. Cade wiped sweat from his brow, looking around warily. No more shadows, at least for now. But I agree. We're only scratching the surface. Ilara took a deep breath, her resolve harder than ever. We move forward. The trials are far from over. But we'll face whatever comes next, together. And so, with the echoes of Malthoria's fallen civilization ringing in their ears, they moved onward into the unknown, determined to uncover the secrets of the lost galaxy. The chamber had fallen eerily silent. The oppressive darkness that had once suffocated them had dissipated, leaving behind a cold, sterile stillness that seemed almost unnatural after the chaos of the trial. As Ilara and her crew stood in the wake of the shadow's destruction, the weight of the moment settled in. Malthoria, a once great civilization whose energy had tainted the very air they breathed, had not simply been destroyed by external forces. It had collapsed under the pressure of its own ambition, its own secrets. But despite the trials, despite the horrors they'd faced, Ilara's resolve remained firm. The truth was out there, hidden within the depths of this forsaken structure, and she would uncover it, no matter the cost. Well, Cade said, breaking the silence, his voice a touch more strained than usual, that was fun. But we didn't exactly come here for a light stroll. What's next? Ilara turned to face her crew, her eyes hardened by the events they'd just survived. We've only just started. The first trial was a test of our minds and our will. Now we need to face what remains of Malthoria's greatest secret. Dr. Dal, still catching his breath, stood up and began scanning the walls. I've been thinking. The energy from the throne, it wasn't just a containment system. It was part of a far greater design. Something so complex, it might have been the Malthorians' greatest invention. A technology that could have revolutionized the galaxy. Could have. Ilara raised an eyebrow. What happened to it? Dal's eyes grew distant, as if piecing together the fragments of a shattered puzzle. It's here hidden. But it's not just a technology, it's a weapon. A weapon so powerful that it could have either saved Malthoria or destroyed it. And it seems it's still functioning. A deep sense of foreboding settled over the crew. The gravity of their mission had just escalated. They weren't just uncovering history anymore, they were uncovering something far more dangerous. "We need to find it," Elara said firmly, "before whoever else is out there finds it first." The crew pressed forward, moving deeper into the structure. The once gleaming walls of the chamber began to darken and grow more erratic, as if the energy flowing through the structure had become unstable. The air grew colder with each step they took, the light from their torches flickering as if it too struggled to maintain its hold in the encroaching darkness. Hours passed. The crew navigated through tight corridors, vast chambers, and staircases that seemed to spiral endlessly. They encountered no more shadows, but the unsettling silence weighed on them, every creak and groan of the ancient structure amplifying the sense that they were not alone. Finally, they reached what could only be described as the heart of the labyrinth, a massive circular room that seemed to stretch forever. At its center stood a towering obelisk, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It shimmered with a strange, pulsing energy, its surface covered in intricate geometric patterns that shifted and changed with every passing second. The air around it crackled with power. "This is it," Dr. Dal said, awe creeping into his voice. "This is the core. The heart of Malthoria's greatest creation." Elara moved forward cautiously, her hand instinctively going to her blaster. "What is it? A weapon? A reactor?" Dal's face was tight with excitement. "It's both. A device capable of harnessing the energy of a star, folding it into something else entirely. It could either power a galaxy or destroy it in an instant. The Malthorians, in their arrogance, believed they could master the universe. But they didn't realize, the power was never meant to be controlled." Elara's mind raced. A weapon capable of destroying stars. No wonder Malthoria had fallen. Their ambition had been their undoing, their creation growing beyond their control. "It's still active, isn't it?" Cade asked, his voice grave. Dal nodded. "Yes. It's been dormant, but the energy is still there. Still potent. It's been waiting for someone to unlock it again." At that moment, a low rumble shook the chamber. The obelisk pulsed with renewed energy, and the floor beneath them trembled as if responding to the crew's presence. Something was happening. The structure, alive with power, was awakening. "We need to get out of here now," Cade shouted, his hand going to his sidearm. But before they could move, the walls around them began to shift. The geometric patterns on the obelisk glowed brighter, and the room filled with a hum, growing louder with each passing second. "The obelisk, it's reacting to us," Dr. Dal cried, frantically stepping back. "We've triggered something. It's going to—" Suddenly, the chamber's ceiling cracked open, revealing a massive energy beam shooting upwards. The energy from the obelisk poured into the sky, creating a vortex of swirling lights. The room spun as the air grew thicker, heavier, pressing down on the crew. It was as if the very fabric of space itself was warping under the pressure of the unleashed power. "We've made a mistake," Elara said, realization dawning. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a beacon. A signal." Before they could react, a deep, rumbling voice echoed throughout the chamber. It was not the voice they had heard before. This was different, filled with malice and command. "You have awakened the lost power of Malthoria. Now you shall become its first victims." The beam of light shot higher, expanding outward, and the walls began to crack further, as though the entire structure was about to collapse. The crew had only moments before the ancient weapon, now fully activated, would destroy everything in its wake. "We have to destroy it," Elara said, her voice shaking but resolute. "If we don't, it'll destroy us, and maybe the entire galaxy." But as they moved toward the obelisk, a voice interrupted their thoughts. It wasn't the dark, commanding one they just heard, but something softer, ancient, and almost sorrowful. "Only the pure of heart may reverse what was once undone. You are the last hope of Malthoria." Elara froze. "What does that mean?" Dr. Dal stepped forward cautiously. It's trying to make a choice. The technology, it doesn't want to destroy us. It wants us to redeem what the Malthorians couldn't." "Then let's redeem it," Elara said, determination setting in. "We fix what they broke. We stop this before it consumes everything." The crew moved forward together, their eyes on the towering obelisk that held the key to Malthoria's forgotten legacy. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the final trial had begun, not just for their survival but for the galaxy's future. As they reached the obelisk, the entire structure trembled violently, and the energy began to surge once more. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. And Elara would not fail.